Jasmin Schubert. Welcome to the podcast.
Mhm. Thank you for having me.
So, you are a remote life coach or a remote business coach? Tell me a little bit about what
Yes,
you actually do.
so yeah, I call myself a remote work coach, and in short, I help people to find clarity and create work-life balance in their life. So that can be career changes, starting remote work, improving their remote work, or overall when people feel stuck in the work they do. This is more the business coaching side. I help them to find the action steps that they need to take for sustainable change.
And how did you get into that? I suppose it was after COVID, right?
Yes, kind of all a mix up. So for myself, I did study business psychology, and I learned about the different ways you can work, you can help people, and one of the ways was also coaching. And yeah, I got really into that. I got really into the opportunity of it's like having a constructive conversation with a friend, but you're not a friend who says, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that." You got a friend that is really curious about the other person and helps them to see things they didn't see before, because everyone has a bit of a blind spot, especially when it comes to topic they really like, or if there is something they really want to see, and if there's something they really don't want to see. So yeah, being that friend and helping others just find really amazing.
And you're in Thailand right now, so kind of moving towards that direction. And what brought you to be in Thailand? And you just left Vietnam not too long ago, right?
Yes. So I started traveling around a year or two ago. First, I was in Europe, exploring Greece, Albania, Macedonia, and of course Germany. And yeah, then I thought it's gonna get cold, yeah, escaping the winter a bit, and I want to see new cultures. I want to explore, and that's why I thought Southeast Asia. It's gonna be the place. I'm gonna explore those places.
And what's the next move from here?
It's gonna be Malaysia, and then it's
Malaysia.
gonna be Japan.
So you've just been traveling all over the world.
Yes, living the remote work life.
And how do you manage all of that? Because I imagine it's hard traveling from one place to another and just dealing with all the different time zones. Like, do you ever just get jet lagged? Um, I could just imagine how hard that could be.
Yeah, so what I do is I don't travel long distances. So I don't travel from Europe to Asia to South America and back. So I try to keep it kind of in the same time zone from country to country. That for one, I don't get a jet lag, and for the other hand, I don't create a lot of environmental disadvantages. So I don't
Yeah.
just I can take a bus sometimes or train. So
Yeah. So how's been Thailand, and what have you been doing in Thailand that goes back to the remote work? How do you? I guess what I wonder is because you say that you are actively working, and I guess it that you're a coach across all these different places. And how do you manage all that? Do you also have a day job apart from being a coach?
no, being the coach is my only job at the moment, and it's taking already a lot of time. So it's meeting clients, mostly online. But if I find new clients, because I go to networking events, I give webinars, I give seminars. So depending on the opportunities I find and the connections I make, yeah, my day is pretty busy.
Also, that's how you schedule everything. You already know where you're going once you land. So, say if you're going to Japan, you already have all these events ready to go, the people that you're going to meet. And so, Remote work has brought us all together. So now, you're in Thailand right now. I'm in America. And we're basically having this conversation, which is incredible. Uh, but how does remote work differ from place to place? Are there any like big differences?
I always have for myself, because remote work can have different phases. For myself, I take around a few days, 2, 3 days, to find my routine again at the new place. Because, for example, I like to work out. If I have a gym in the condo where I'm staying, then it's easy. I just change the floor and go to the gym, and then I kind of put my remote work around that. But if I have to account for going to the gym, then I may change that to the evening or all those things. So for me, it's about creating the routine to stay productive. And that can change depending on where I am.
So that just changes. And what are the norms when that you know of that are in different places? Because every single place has different work norms. And is that true also with remote work if you're having people from different countries? Or are you, when you talk about remote workers, are they like the same nationality that you don't really have to worry? Because, I imagine in Japan, there are American workers. So their norms would be, would fit with American workers in America. But I also imagine there are Japanese workers. And does it change a lot, or do you see that their norms are becoming more globalized and more standard across all these different countries? Or are they sticking with their own working norms?
So in regard of the people I work with or the people that I meet, it does change. It of course highly depends on the person you meet, but for example, Japan, as you mentioned, they have a very strong focus on work, so they would work late. And even today, it's there are people. The work-life balance is really out in order in Japan for most of the places. They wouldn't leave the office before the boss leaves the office, which can be really late in the evening. We're talking like 9, 10 p.m. because you don't want to lose the face or you want to show the respect. So yes, that can change.
And in Europe, I imagine that they don't work as much. That they like have taken like longer lunch breaks. They don't work too late. They're more relaxed in their approach. So that's also true.
But it depends on the country because I don't feel like Germany would take long lunch breaks. But if I think of Spain or something or France, yes, that can differ. So everything has a bit of a advantage and disadvantage. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
And how does that play in with remote work? Uh, because I imagine if you're in a country like Japan that you like working late, wouldn't it? I mean, I guess it's the same as working in an office that your eyes become strained
Mm.
and your neck kind of becomes strained as well. So that doesn't really change between what they're already doing in the office and how they're working remotely, just on the computer. Like their their uh, their habits are the same.
Are you saying for Japanese people that also start to work remotely?
Yeah, once they go
Uh-huh.
remotely, do their habits kind of change?
I didn't notice a certain pattern, but an overall issue with remote work or the work-life balance is that you don't unplug from work because it's so accessible. You work on your computer, so it's very tempting to work more overtime. And I could see how that in a Japanese culture, if somebody from there would start remote work, they also could go either way. Either they raise their awareness because they change to remote work and they really focus on unplugging, or they go all in and they basically do what they would do in the office and work long.
Yeah. And what do you say people have more trouble with remote work, that they need some like some coaching with?
Boundaries. So the main issue I keep facing when people are already in remote work is that their productivity or their motivation declines. And in most of the cases, it's connected to boundaries because they're not setting them with their coworkers, with the organization in itself, or even with their families or people around them, like just barging in while they're working and then they don't really get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, with me, it was kind of the opposite because although I did have a job that was hybrid, so it was like half in the office, half at home, I did go when I got my degree. It became remotely because it was when COVID happened. So everything just went online. But I felt myself actually being able to get more work done because I didn't have to stress about walking from one class to another one. I could just like plug from one class to another one and just continue working and doing just the work all around the clock. It didn't matter where I was. I didn't have any distractions. So to me, it helped me. But I guess when you're working and don't feel like you are able to unplug, I feel like that could actually have or that could come with some mental problems that you feel like you're always need to be working.
Yeah, it can go on your confidence or your self worth because you feel like you are not enough, you're not doing enough, and it sounds like you really had it figured out. Important is also that you set the goal for the week, for the day, like what do you want to achieve, and so it's a good way to stay productive. And if people don't do that, they feel like they run around in circles. They're doing something, they are somehow they feel like they're productive, but at the end of the day, they don't have the outcome.
Because they're always like chasing this goal that they never seem to feel like they could accomplish. They're always like on to the next thing without really ever finishing any task.
Hmm,
Yeah. And
exactly.
before before the podcast session, we were talking about the reasons that people tend to stay in a job that that they feel does not give them a proper salary or they don't get a salary increase. And there were two reasons. Can you elaborate on those?
Yes, so the first reason we saw was uncertainty. Because you are, even if the job is not perfect and it's not giving you everything you want, you kind of settle for it. Because what is the alternative? The alternative can be scary. You don't know what's the next job gonna be. Are you even gonna able to get a job that quickly? How is it gonna pay? How are the coworkers like? So all those little things. That's one reason a person could try to just stay and settle, not looking for something else. They're scared of what's out there. And the other one can be, well, if this job, yes, it doesn't give you the salary, but it gives you something else. It gives you it aligns with your values, with what you're doing, the work that you do. It really aligns with what you want to achieve in the world. So it's maybe worth it for you to stay in the job, or you get other things like good training, good career chances. So,
Yeah. So I worked at this company and there were employees that had been there for like 20, 30, 40 years. And I just wondered that how could someone stay in a certain company for so long? With me, I like watching a company grow and I like being part of the progress when working with a project. But
mm,
as you mentioned, it's just comfort, right? And the skills that you feel like you have, s- at some point, they will just become obsolete and you wouldn't be able to apply for those or apply those skills at a different company. And that could just make matters worse because, say, a company just goes out of business. Now you're stuck with all these obsolete skills that no other company uses anymore. But what do you say or what do you have to say to people that feel like they're just too comfortable in their job? Do you say that they should just stay and just figure it out, or do you advise to improve their skills and move to a different company?
So of course it depends. It's gonna be my main answer.
Yeah.
Like, what are you unhappy with and what do you want to change? But in general, you can do better and you deserve better if that's what you're going for. And there are always ways to achieve that. So don't do it because you are scared or because you have this mindset of avoidance. You want to avoid fear. You want to avoid all the negative things. If you stay, do it because you really are okay with it. So search inside yourself and find that reasons. And if you are not aligned, then do something, change something. You can do that. You can do that by yourself, by developing your skills and looking for something. You can get help from family, friend, or some other support. So you don't
Yeah.
have to settle for less.
Yeah, because it's hard really just having one answer, because I guess it just all depends
Hmm.
from employee to employee. But what other issues do you see with workers that they need some guidance with?
Blind spots, because a lot of times when people are unhappy is because there's an opportunity they don't really see, or they have this limiting belief or this assumption, like, I can never talk to my boss. He will not listen. I won't be able to change something. So overcoming those blocks, also like the ideas that you have about yourself, like holding yourself tiny in terms of, I deserve this, I can't do any better, I'm not valuable enough, or any kind of thoughts like this, is a huge issue for a lot of workers.
So just feeling like you're not valuable enough to go to a different company, or just not feeling like you're valued at your current company is an issue, right?
Yeah, it can go to, I deserve this job, I can't do any better, so why should I change?
Yeah, because a lot of this advice also could be applied in people's lives and people's relationships. And I feel
Mm.
that if because there are also people that just go from one job to another job and to another job, and those people just have issues with committing to one thing. But there are also people that go and stay actually in a job for so many years, and that could be related to the fear of letting go.
Mm. It can have a lot of reasons. Like, some people, they don't care so much about their job. They're okay with having a job and they have an amazing private life. They have amazing family, and this is what they thrive for. So they don't really care so much about the work. And people that usually spend a long time, we are also kind of in the middle, our generation.
Yeah.
And now looking at people that have been there for 20, 30 years, it's also a generation issue. We say issue, but difference. We have a lot of more opportunities, like remote work, especially after COVID, right? It accelerated so quickly. We have new digital opportunities, the technology, they all had to adjust.
And so you came into this field after COVID. Were you in this before, like prior to COVID?
Prior to COVID, I did travel already. For example, I studied in Beijing in China before COVID, and I did have the opportunity to work hybrid for a company, and yeah, that made things easier. And then during COVID, it just skyrocketed, and I really liked it. I like to work remote, so I decided to stay there.
So you were in this before COVID, but it just seems that after COVID, it at least remote work felt more like mandatory, so more forced rather than before. So I
Mm.
also assume that that brought with a lot of issues.
Yeah. So with remote work can have advantage and disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
It also strongly depends on the person who's doing it. If you're an introverted person, you most likely are very happy
Mm-hmm.
being at home, doing your work, not caring. If you're extroverted, you may really miss the office. You may miss the connection with people.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, it can change because yes, you're extroverted, but you have a good social life, a good private life. So you don't really need the activity at the office. So yeah,
Did
it
it
depends on
change?
people.
Like, did remote work change much prior to COVID and after?
It got faster, it got easier, it got more understood. We have a different awareness, especially
Mm-hmm.
of mental health. Um, yeah, so I think there are more studies around it. Uh, what else changed? What could I change? Well, it's more accepted in
Mm-hmm.
society in general.
And it got more streamlined as well because now that everyone's doing remote
Mm.
work, companies needed to adapt and just
Yeah.
like business overall. So certain companies that were not doing remote work, suddenly they're doing remote work. So working with other companies that are also working remotely, it became easier for everyone to adapt. And a lot of people figured out that you don't have to go into the office. A lot of the work could be done at home. So that also changed.
Yes.
And
Exactly. So yeah, there are new challenges coming up, new opportunities. You also notice the same things. Communication is important. It doesn't matter if you're in the office or if you are working from home or from wherever else.
yeah, and that kind of also made me realize that I could have a podcast, and I don't actually have to have the people in here. Probably I don't really have the means to do that yet. I'm still trying to figure it out myself before I'm able to actually have like in prison podcast. So it's easier for me to manage this since I don't have to manage everything. And I feel like that gave a rise to companies also. Like, you don't have to have all these employees in the office. We could probably just do all of our work online without actually having physical offices. And I know that
Mm.
WeWork also had a lot of issues because after a lot of people went back to the office, not a lot of people were using their facilities. And the other thing happened that all of these companies that or not companies necessarily, but like landlords that owned office buildings for where companies could have their offices were actually losing out on that because now suddenly you had a bunch of companies that didn't need to have employees in the office. So a lot of those landlords lost with not having their office spaces occupied. So now everyone is realizing that you don't have to have people in the office to actually be able to produce any type of work. So that was interesting as well. And how have you seen that?
Yes.
What are the biggest changes you've seen?
Well, a lot of more co-working places, of course. I think a lot of landlords also, like you mentioned, if they were smart, said, okay, I can't rent it to a whole company, but there are still people interested in coming to some sort of office. So more co-working places.
Yeah.
And in terms of changes, also more regulations, different regulations. Some countries are still figuring out how to regulate, especially the digital nomads, because they're not really at one place. And so now we have more digital nomad visas. Thailand just opened for a 5 6 year digital nomad visa,
So
for
what is
example.
that actually?
It just allows you to stay if you have a certain source of income to live in Thailand for 5 years. So what people used to do before, they get a tourist visa or whatnot, and then when it expires, they just leave the country for a while and then they come back. because they are not, if you don't work with a company in Thailand, if you're not hired by a company, for example, you don't have a work visa option in Thailand.
So you
So
could
that
actually work.
changed.
So you could actually work for any company and then just go say to Thailand and say that I'm just working here, although I'm employed by like someone else, but I'm here doing work, even even though the company is not here. Is that what it is?
No, like now it changed. Like before, when you wanted a visa in Thailand for really staying here, one of the options would be you get hired by a company in Thailand that then would have, of course, to justify why are we hiring a foreigner and all those processes. And now we have the digital nomad visa, so that's a bit easier because if you have a certain amount of income, and there are some other criteria that I don't have all in my head, but yeah,
Yeah.
then you can apply for the digital nomad visa in Thailand, and even without being employed by an organization, you can stay here.
Oh wow. So you could just be there and working. And that's
Hmm.
what you've been doing. You've been traveling to all these places, being able to work just remotely.
Yes.
And a lot of these events that you go to are in person, and then you talk about how how great it is to work remotely. Is that something that you do as well? Like you talk about the benefits of working remotely versus in the office, or do you just try to talk about the bad sides of working remotely and what employees could do, or is it like a little bit of both?
So so to one part of the question, yes, everyone can do it. If you have a nice topic, you can organize events, you can approach organizations, you can even provide training if you have certain certifications and all those things. And I like to do it because I like to network. I like to make connections. I like to meet people. And yes, I like to share my knowledge also as a business psychologist. So I also talk a lot about cross-cultural challenges between working between Asia and Europe, for example.
Kind of like what we talked about, like how everyone has their different norms.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's very
Yeah.
important. At least when I took a class in international relations, we talked about how all of these places all had different norms. So if you go to a certain place and as an expat, and then you're not accustomed to how people do business there, you could have like a hard time navigating around.
Exactly. I had a hard time actually in China. I worked there and I'm from Germany, so I'm a very direct person. If
Yeah.
I have a bit of an issue with something or if I don't understand, I say it right out. Well, I used to do that at the beginning because then I actually realized, oh, people lose face. So if I say it in a meeting, I shouldn't say it like that. So I have to find a other way to speak through the flower to mention that I have troubles with something.
Yeah, I know. I've had issues with working with people that were from China as well, and it's kind of hard navigating that because you want certain instructions just to be direct, and they kind of just give you like a blanket statement, and you need to kind of figure it out. Is that what you were facing as well?
Yeah, they don't say no directly, for example.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
communication can be an
Yeah,
issue.
I know. It's just funny how everyone works differently, and it's just like if you go across the border, like everything just changes, and people are just so in their different ways, and everyone's trying to do the same thing. Everyone's trying to produce the work, but they just have a different way going about it. And that's something that I've seen working with so many different people from so many different places. Sometimes it even differs from state to state. People just work differently. If I'm working with someone from California, they work differently from than someone from Texas. It's weird.
Sounds exciting though. It's never the same.
No, yeah. I mean, it's exciting figuring it out. But there's also that thing like you need to figure it out because sometimes if you say something, they may take it differently, even though you didn't mean it that way. And it's just a form of communication, of trying to get by from from person to person because the US is interesting because every single state differs and it's like a different little country because every different state has different norms. Not drastic, but there are certain things here and there that are different. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, and you seem to have a really good self-awareness that you are able to see those differences and to adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
Not everyone has that.
Yeah. And so this whole this whole remote working thing, do you see it as slowing down or no? Because I know that after COVID, a lot of companies actually brought in their workers and are doing less so of remote work. But do you see it as being here to stay? How do you see that changing in the future?
So now I think 2025 is going to be interesting because, for example, Amazon just 2 weeks ago, they changed back to complete work in the office again. So yeah, the organizations I feel they would like us to go back, and a lot of employees are like, no, I have more advantages if I don't have to travel all the time. So it's going to be interesting for organizations of not forcing people to
Yeah.
go back to the office, but rather than create the environment that people say, I want to come back to the office.
Yeah, because if you're, say, I'm living in Vegas now, but there are some opportunities that are in different places, different states. And if as someone living in Vegas, you'd want to work for a company that say it's in California, but the cost of living in California is really high, or Washington has companies, like Starbucks is headquartered in Seattle, so it'd be it'd be pretty good living in one state but working for all these different companies that you just have access to because the internet, and I without having to move there. And another thing is Oregon. Nike's in Oregon, but from what I hear, Oregon is not the best place to live. So it'd be fun, working for a company that's located in a certain area without actually having to move there. But certain companies are doing so. Other companies like having their employees in the office. It's pretty good having the employees in the office, but there is that change that you need to move somewhere. Like, you don't have access to all the companies within one location.
Yeah, and it's also the question, why do they want people to come back to the office? Is it because they have the feeling of I can control the employees better and the productivity is better? Because even in the office, you have a lot of distractions. You have more chatting, you have more gossip. There are other ways that bring productivity down. But yes, if their managers, for example, are used to that, the managers can intervene and help to raise productivity. But there's also ways to do that in a remote work setting. Like train your managers, train the leadership to really support the remote workers, and then you don't have this kind of problems.
Because you definitely need to have trust in your employees, because if you don't, then it's
Mm.
just not going to work. But where can people actually find more of your work or get in touch with you?
Well, you can get in touch via my website, jasminschubert.com, or you find me on LinkedIn with that name, or on Instagram under Remote Work Coach. It's probably easier.
Yeah.
And yeah, to start remote work, there are different ways. And for me, the first step is always get clear on what you want, because there are many opportunities out there. There are many ways of doing remote work, hybrid, traveling, not traveling. But there's just one way that's good for you. So find out what that is. Start with the result. and create the job that you want.
Hmm. Well, Jasmin Schubert, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you.